Tell me, are you ready to find your weird way? Weird was a concept that was spoken of long ago. It meant fate, it meant destiny, it meant your path in life. I'm your host, Dean Bentley, and I am here to explore how you can connect to your own path in life, to know the essence of your own soul, to connect to that single spark that lives within the deepest recesses of your being that says, "This is why I am here," to go beyond the limitations, the constrictions of the modern world, and open you to the possibilities and the potentiality of what is possible within this world. Join me as we dive deep on the weird way. Welcome, welcome. We have another episode of the Weird Way coming at you today. I am feeling the juice already. This has been Sometimes I just get so excited in the warm-up conversation where I get to drop in with our guest, and this one has just already got energy moving. It's got excitement. It's got like this aliveness of what we're here to explore today. And that for me, I just feel we're in for something good. I have no idea where we're going, and we're open to all the rabbit holes. And for me, that's what the weird way is all about, finding our weird way. And that's what we do here. So today I've got Allura Halliwell coming on, Australia's leading core wound expert. And just from the introduction, I was like, there's some resonance here. There's so much excitement. Allura, absolute pleasure to have you here today.
Oh, thank you, Dean. Such an honor. I am also excited. I can feel the energy beginning to move. So this is going to be epic.
Mm. I want to dive right in because I feel like that's what your work is actually all about. You're talking about the core wound. So for me, I always want to just like get in there and get to what we can actually uncover. And so when you talk about the core wound, I'd love if you could just give the listeners an idea of what you mean by the core wound.
Yeah, that's a great question. So on my journey, I was really conscious that I was doing so much spiritual work. I was meditating, I was doing the breath work, I was really reading all the books, I was being reflective, but I actually couldn't shift some of the really deep patterns that were running through my reality and that kept being activated in my nervous system, my emotional system, my thought system. And that led me to a really deep exploration of what is it that is underpinning my human experience and that's kind of running on a loop and on repeat that I'm really not able to touch just on a conscious level. And when I went there, I was like, oh my goodness, there is a really deep pattern that's here within me. And for me, it was the unloved wound I found first. And it was this repetitive, looping, pain and fear-based experience of consistently seeking a loving experience outside of me, but consistently feeling this deep separation from that experience and this deep internal longing for that experience. And that longing and that separation was drawing me into these loops of patterns and behaviors that were consistently actually showing me the outcome that I was trying to avoid, which was an unloved experience. So that really drew me in, and I was like, oh my goodness, what are the patterns that are here? And I ended up finding and really deeply exploring the unworthy pattern of just not feeling good enough, of no matter what you did externally, what validation you were trying to seek, what you tried to create, how much money you earned, what you did, you still felt not enough. And then the unknown pattern, which is that you're constantly feeling misunderstood, not interpreted correctly, that you're not fully in purpose and not expressing fully, that people just don't understand you or get you, that you feel isolated and separate in that. And these three patterns just emerged really clearly for me. And that initiated the journey of like, what is it on a really deep, fundamental, foundational level that we need to do as humanity to shift these patterns of separation, and where do they come from? And that was the beginning of the journey.
Oh, I love this because what I feel, and especially before we began recording here, we are talking about how in the spiritual community there can almost be this. I at times use the word bypassing, but it's almost like we're sitting on the surface of what's occurring. It's like, oh, I've got this problem, and I'm trying to put out all these different fires all over the place. And it's like, why is nothing working? And I know I've been there. It's like, oh, I've got that problem over there and that one, and I feel like I'm trying to stretch all the time to solve them. And the actual invitation is to go inwards. And this is what I'm actually hearing what you're talking about with these core wounds is it's that core wound and it's the origin of the symptoms that are being created by these problems that are sitting on the surface. And when we can track them, we can actually solve the surface level problems because we stop the ripple that's being caused at the deep level.
Yeah, 100%. Because reality is holographic, right? We are the projector of our own reality. And whatever is alive in us, we have to be conscious of. So it's really easy to drop into a trap of feeling like we're a victim to reality, like the same things keep repeating to us over and over again. And that creates a really deep sense of being like a failure or not doing it right or not having the good days or, not kicking the goals or whatever it is. And this concept of the core wounding takes a deeper level understanding that you begin to realize you are not the victim of reality. You just need to witness and consciously work with these unconscious patterns to be the true creator of your reality. So nature, and we are, we're a natural experience, we're human, organic experience. Organic human experience or natural experience is drawn to creating itself via patterns. It's kind of the default. It's the easy way to create around you. And if you look at all of nature, it's all in patterns. So my inquiry has been about where is this unconscious template of this pattern that gets projected outside of us. And what I've found is when people understand that they're running that pattern internally and they're turning their vision inwards and running through the really deep processes to consciously witness that pattern, then it's creating a whole different, like a fractal shifting to project a whole different external pattern around you. And then you no longer feel like a victim. It's like, oh, I can take that piece of reality and I can reflect internally, where is that unconsciously running within me? What is it that's causing that to reverberate outside of me? And that interface between the external and the internal becomes really powerful. We don't have to feel like a victim to it because we see it as a greater design. And the design itself is something that I was really curious how I discovered that. I'm not sure if you want to hear
I
about
would
that.
love to. I would
Yeah.
love to hear.
So, 6 years ago, I had a spontaneous experience whereby I wasn't particularly spiritual or on a spiritual path so much. I was just living a pretty ordinary life. But friends of mine invited me to a meditation retreat, and I was just drawn to go for the holiday, basically. But while I was there, I had a very spontaneous, organic, and very powerful spiritual and life-changing experience where I actually was walking to a meditation on the beach and I fell over. And as I fell over, I could feel my consciousness was pulling up through my body to the top of my head. And I actually had my consciousness spontaneously move out of my body, out of my head, out into space, and I could see my body on the ground. And then my consciousness continued to move to become absorbed in white light. So very much like what maybe some of you have heard as a traditional near-death experience. I left my body fully and got absorbed into that light. And then from there, I went further into the void. And the void for me is what I would say was pure source energy, where I no longer had a connection to being a body on a beach or a consciousness. I merged back into the all. And I know I went back in because I had a degree of awareness just before I became everything. And then as I was everything, I was unable to consciously recall being everything, because when you enter source, you become the all. And it's almost like you return to everything, and you are everywhere, and you are all potentials, and there is no degree of separation. And this experience was just, I think what happened in retrospect, it actually rewired my whole nervous system, my whole mental capacity, my whole being, because I actually, as I came back out of that experience after about an hour and a half, I merged back through the layers of consciousness to merge back into my body. But as I opened my eyes, I literally had no awareness of where I was or who I was. So I'd had my identity pretty much wiped in that experience, in terms of who I was, who I knew myself to be, and people and places and things around me felt kind of familiar, but actually very foreign. So it felt like being born for the first time. And that's when I began to have this, as I was kind of going through that, that post experience and post integration, and I was trying to reorientate myself, because it was vastly disorientating leaving my body to that degree and coming back with no training or understanding of what it was. And coming back in, I was like, oh my gosh, I have no idea why I'm here, why I'm a human, and what this human experience is about. And that's when my spiritual journey began. I began inquiring and trying to put the pieces together. And I had a massive Kundalini awakening, which meant I was vibrating constantly 24/7 for the first 2 years of that. And that whole kind of juncture, I was trying to put everything together. But what began to come through was this degree of separation. I could close my eyes and go back to the void. But as I opened my eyes and had a sensory three-dimensional experience, I was like, oh my gosh, what is this world? And that's where I began to see the wounding, that, you can have these incredible out of body, amazing next level dimensional experiences. And I truly had that connection with the void. But then when you're in a physical body, the capacities of the body to relate to the three-dimensional world, it brings up this whole new level of separation. And that's where the discovery of the core wound really began. Yeah.
Find this so juicy in so many ways. So I'm a big fan of like the mythic, or like looking at things and life through a mythic lens. And I find when we're talking about core wound, and the original wound is the separation, but separation from source. And when you were sharing then and you actually had that experience, I'm not surprised by the work that you do, because for me, that's the separation, the pain that so many people experience it. Like we can go biblical, we can go so many layers with that, of like the Adam and Eve getting kicked from the Garden of Eden. It's that original wound where we're separated from God by whatever experience we have had. And for me, the sacred wound is actually also, which I call the core wound, like I see them as very similar, the invitation back into that divine union with source, because without it, perhaps we would never get back there. And I'm curious if you've noticed this with yourself, like the core wound is actually the gateway back to that experience where then we can come into that divine relationship.
Oh, you've nailed it 100%. It's actually, the wound is the portal of unification with source and with self. And absolutely, it's been the pathway back to my, wholeness. And understanding that pathway back has been, I suppose, I believe everything is a micro of the macro and the macro of the micro. So the separation from source and the separation from what you believe that you want to experience, whether that be love or validation or worthiness or being understood or whatever that is, that's the micro of the macro. So when you reunite with the whole part of you, then there is no longing for those things outside of you anymore. There's a completion within you, and you still experience them in the three-dimensional reality, because it's fun and it's an amazing gift to be a human, but you're not seeking out of that pain and fear that's coming from that initial fracture. So that's kind of the word I use to describe that fracture from source, the fracture from the truth of self, the fracture from these ideals that we think we want outside of us, but are truly the gateway back to our full completion. And I believe that's what we're here to do. We're here to be souls that are so in the embodiment of source and wholeness internally, yet having a three-dimensional experience. And that's why we came back out of source, to be able to have that, so we can know that. And that's heaven on earth, right? When you're whole in this in a physical experience.
There's so many elements I just love of this conversation, especially this piece around lack. Because I see so many people within like a community or whatever, there's this seeking, and I've done it so many times myself where we're seeking something outside of ourselves. And it's like, if I can have that, if it's the money, the love, the relationship, the friendships, like if I can have that, then I'll be whole, then I'll have what I want and everything will be okay. But it's actually this recognition, though, that comes from within first. And when we're like actually coming from within, it changes everything. And we begin to recognize the pain. And this is the conversation we had before we jumped on here, is the teacher that's inviting us into healing. It's the one that's saying, hey, here's liberation. The universe is in service to us and our potential if we're willing to see it and take radical responsibility for who we're being and what's occurring within our life. And so I'm curious, like with people, or if you had something to share for people where they're like, yes, I may be intellectually understanding this of, okay, there's pain in my life, so I'm creating that at some level, and I know I need to do work, but like I've maybe they've tried it, right? They've done a bit, and it's like, how can they actually be invited in to meet this part instead of going into that victim of why is this happening, and beginning to face this so they can see that the universe is serving them.
Yeah, I love that. I love that question, because everything is serving our evolution, even the things that are the most painful. What's happened, I believe, is that there has been a massive distortion within our own conceptual understanding of what pain is, what trauma is, and what our energetics are really all about, which means that we kind of keep hitting these stumbling blocks that we try to heal, but then we just have the stuff happen all over again. And then we get disheartened and we think there's something wrong with us. And that's probably one of the biggest parts of my work, is helping people understand that these very core dynamics are actually embedded in our reality. They're not actually that you have a problem. They're embedded in the reality, in the design of this structure of humanity. And that's number one, because then people don't feel like they're doing it wrong, because it's actually a design mechanism to evolve you. So that's really important, that if it hasn't worked before, it's maybe because there's a piece of the puzzle missing, not that you're getting it wrong. The next part of that is that I'm so passionate, my body's almost shaking, about people developing a relationship with pain. And when I say pain, I'm not speaking to suffering, which is like a repeated looping of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. That's addiction, and that's the suffering that we feel as humans. I'm talking about developing a full conscious relationship with the feeling of pain and the gateway of pain as a portal. It's an energetic portal within our bodies. So this is something that I really, I work with a lot with different, with the people I work with and within myself, whereby pain is real and it's the truth of our experience, and it's not to be turned away from. It's to actually be entered into as a gateway of reconnection. But what's happening because of the suffering and because of the bodily response that pain is something to fear, to move away from, needs to be reconditioned to understand that pain is actually what we go through and into to create that liberation. It needs to be reconfigured within our mental space, our emotional space, and our nervous system space. Because the nervous system wants to flee, right? Or fight against the pain. It does not want to drop in and be present with it. And the mental system's like, I don't want to go anywhere near that pain. I just want to distract it myself, go after my addiction, like watch more Netflix, see more people, get another job, whatever it is, take away the pain, get me out of there. And then the emotional stuff is like, I've been taught that if I feel my emotions, I'm usually, from parents, probably going to be in trouble for being emotional, or be shut down, or have to act it out in angry ways, but not truly feel it. So there's all these layers of our kind of dimensional layers where we block pain. But when you stop and you fully drop into the sensation, the quality, and the information and the energetics of pain in your body, and you create space for that pain, the level and the transformation that can happen within your body is so profound. And because the pain's a portal and it's real, the pain that you feel now will be identical to the pain you've always felt through all space and time. So this concept that we have to keep healing all these layers, for me, isn't really as valid. Yes, we need to keep unpacking programs and keep disseminating programs that are keeping us stuck. But the pain, the truth of pain, it's a portal that encompasses everything. So when you drop through the truth of pain, you liberate all of your energetics, all of your consciousness that's trapped in the construct of the suffering that's around that pain. So for me, pain is just such a pivotal, like developing a relationship to pain is such a pivotal part of our journey that I think hasn't been really looked at and really deeply embodied. Yeah, so just for people to know that it's possible to go through your pain without the suffering, and that you're not doing it wrong, that there's actually constructs in this reality that we need to be mindful of. That, I think that's really important for people to hear. Yeah.
I think that's one of the most important things. And if we look at reality and how we're conditioned to be, so much of us like are suppressing our emotions, we're suppressing our desires, we're suppressing how we like reality itself of saying, no, this isn't true, this isn't it. So pain is in a way the last frontier for our bodies, our soul to scream out to us to say, acknowledge me, be with me, actually acknowledge what is happening to our human experience. Because this is for me the feather, the brick, and then the bus. People are so often being like, oh, something's wrong. I don't want to face it, so I'm ignoring it. I push it under the carpet. It gets a little worse and a little worse until actually it comes to a point where it's you've got to face it. But then our medical systems and so much else have conditioned us, oh, we need to dull the pain or ignore the pain or just manage the pain rather than actually being like, no, this is the invitation. There's something that the universe and our own soul is trying to tell us here. Are we willing to meet that and face it and go into that? Because, like you're saying, that is the place where liberation lays through the pain because there's a message in there. There's a indication that we're out of alignment with who we're meant to be and we're being called home to the truth of it. And when we can come to that, that's when the magic occurs. That's when the liberation, that's when we're like, oh, I remember who I am. It's through.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so powerful. So powerful. So much consciousness gets released in pain, through pain.
Mm.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah.
Mm.
And for me, there's this element of vitality because often that pain comes from suppressed emotions, which we got told weren't welcome, either that's anger, sadness, grief, even joy. There can be a suppression of that. And then we open up that channel through the pain of that disconnection. And then the channel begins to flow, and it's like, oh, wow, here I am again. And this is what we're remembering. This is where we're going.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And connection's the key word. Pain is a connector. It's connecting you to the disconnection that's happened as you've gated that pain. So something's happened that's been painful, and instead of allowing that the full expression of what it is and having that space around it to really understand it and feel it through the body, it gates and it puts a block on it in your body. And as you block the pain, you're blocking higher levels of awareness and connection to yourself and to everything around you. So then it kind of layers on top of each other, and then you find yourself disconnected from life, from relationships, from purpose. And most people are like, oh, I need to move into those things positively and make them happen. And, and I absolutely agree in like inspired action to get things flowing. But if your core being is in a state of suffering and avoidance and addiction, then you're not going to be able to feel the fruit of that either. And that actually reminded me, Dean, it's that I think the third point in this is around our energetics. And we touched on that a little bit before. Um, maybe I could just share a little bit about the
Yeah.
energetic relationship to that. And this understanding that we're seeking the external thing, we're seeking the external experience of love, we're seeking the external experience of worth, we're seeking the external understanding. But what we're actually truly seeking is an energetic completion. We're wanting something outside of us to come inside of us and make us feel whole and complete. And I think the thing that we don't kind of get is that it's not the form of energy you're looking for your own completion. So we can never receive energetics from what's externally around us to create wholeness and completion within us. The only thing that can complete our energetic template is our own energy. So when you're in this state of seeking and trying to make things happen around you to make you feel better, it's always going to be a false equation. You're never going to get the energetics back that actually make you go, oh my gosh, I finally feel that. You have to cultivate your own energetic experience internally. And for me, that's really about energetic reclamation as a foundational practice, which means drawing your energy back in to create a really deep template of wholeness and connection internally. And that's scary for a lot of people because people are like, well, if I bring my energy back, I won't be achieving, I won't be succeeding, I won't be like trying to make things happen or trying to connect or make this work out. But it's like, that's all in a false matrix anyway. You're doing that from your own lack, your own separation. So bring all your energy home, stabilize your internal template, and then create from there. And it's such a different experience because you only want your own love. You only want your own validation. You only want your own understanding. You don't really want it from outside of you. But we've got confused in the design of this experience because we've got senses and we're in a three-dimensional world. We think we want to pull the energy from us, from outside of us. But no, we actually just want the return of our own energy so we can go from there. Yeah.
Me relate so much to people's experience of depression or dark night of the soul, where they actually have been an experience where they've been pushing so much energy outside of themselves. And it's like, okay, I just need to do more. And this is where I see a lot of entrepreneurs go to burnout. And I've been there myself, where it's like, I need to push, I need to do more and more and more. And that eventually there's nothing left. It's like, we can't continue to push because there's a point where our energy can only extend to so far from that inner movement of lack. And then it all comes collapsing in on itself, and people go through the burnout or the depression or the dark night. And that's the invitation to bring that energy back. And then it becomes an implosion where it's like all that energy pours back in, and eventually something else gets created if we allow it. It's like naturally when the energy is full, you start shooting out energy. You're a vibrant being, and it's just so incredible to see.
Mm.
And you spoke about like this energetic reclamation, and I just wanted to see if we could ground that in for maybe people on a more practical level of like how they could begin to really embody that sensation of how can they bring that energy back to themselves as well.
Mm. So through my explorations of consciousness and energetics, I've discovered that there's a very powerful energetic gateway within our bodies. And it's actually right in the sternum point in the center of the chest. And you can feel there's like a slight divot in that space. You can just find just kind of between the breasts, just halfway down the sternum point, and there's just a slight divot. And when you find it, you might feel a little bit of a tenderness in there. And if you just put your fingers there gently, you can, I just invite you to just sense what comes up as you feel that space. And for some people, you can feel just a little bit of a greater sensitivity and awareness of that space. And it can sometimes give a sensation through the body, just touching that space. I don't know if you can find that there, Dean.
Yeah, yeah. As you're speaking, my whole body's activated, and I can feel more awareness running from my head to my toes.
Yeah, beautiful. So that for me is the energetic gateway between the external reality and the internal being in your internal body. So the practice is, in summary, is to gently and consciously breathe while you're breathing physically to visualize or sense that your sacred energy and essence is being breathed back into the portal of your body via that point. And so we're breathing the energy back from all the thought forms that we've externalized about how we think things should be or the way we think we want things to be. And we breathe that energy home. And then we breathe back in all the reactivity or emotional addictions we have to responding in the same way to things that just get us the same outcomes. And we breathe that energy home. And then we breathe home all the energy from all the behaviors that we've done where we've just cycled around and around in a circle and we're putting all our resources outside of us, but we just don't get an outcome we want. And we breathe all that energy home. And then we breathe it all the way down to the soles of our feet. So we fill our body consciously with our energy and our essence. And we allow that to fill all the way up our legs. And we breathe in between the hip bones. So we're filling the base of our body with our sacred energy and essence. And we breathe into the umbilical cord region, the organs. And then breathing down into the solar plexus, seat of our power, returning our energetic resources and our essence to our sacred solar plexus. And then we're breathing through that sternum point and expanding the energetic resources of you through the chest and into the chamber of the heart. Fully breathing your own energy and essence back to where it belongs. And then breathing all the way up to the collarbones. Allowing the energy and essence to flow down your arms into your fingertips. And then taking a deep breath of your energetic essence into your throat space, into the back of your spine. And finally, breathing your energetic resources and essence up into your mind. Filling the right and left hemisphere of your mind with your sacred energy. Allowing it to flow down onto your face. All the way down the front of the body. And just sealing the energetics in through the sternum point. And taking one breath where you circulate your energy within your body. Whole and complete with your own sacred energy.
That was a beautiful practice for anyone. I highly recommend that. Highly.
That was beautiful. Thank you for allowing me to flow through that. And yes, I do have meditations where we go through that more in depth, but that was a general sensation of the reclamation. So I hope that landed for you if you were listening in. Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, this is like the continued invitation of this is a continued process where we need to honor these energies. For me, most days, I need the practices to clear out energy, to come home, to cut cords, and just return to my essence and like to allow that process. And I want to speak into this because this has been such a big piece for me. Why I've been so scared to do that in the past is my desire for control. And it's like, if I have energy out there, I can control. If I'm stuck in the stories of the mind, then I'm in control. But it's not true. But that's the reason and beneath it, which says I need to control. And there's this deeper core wound of I like love in there. But it's that awareness that we need to be willing to let go of that control to come into ourselves as well and trust that who we are as our core being, that is enough and that is what's going to provide what we desire within this world. And there's no need for more. There's no need to be chasing or controlling the relationship or any of that. Who we are is enough. And when we let go of that, that's what we will find.
Yeah, I love that so much. And that's the difference between a survival pattern and a thriving pattern. So the survival pattern is I have to keep doing that thing I've always done to stay safe because the safety is patterned in, the separation, the experiences we've had when we were little and growing up, that it's painful, right? If we're in separation. So we want to keep trying to manage the external reality to try and create safety. But I call it an illusion of safety because it's not truly safe because you're often having to abandon, betray, or exhaust yourself to get that outcome, and it never truly comes. So yeah, I really love that conscious awareness of that need to control. And I think that's where the concept of moving from the known to the unknown comes in as part of the journey back to our own truth. That when we're in the now, we're in the unknown, we're in the pure potential of experience of our existence. And when we're in the known, we're in the projection of our past onto the future, into fear, into this design that if I do it this time, if I get it right, it's going to work out differently. And it never does. So
Yeah. No, it does not, and that's the biggest trap. And like I want to go back to a conversation we have earlier and segue a little bit because this is like into this, and you're talking about people healing, and we're talking about the surface level, and then needing to do more work and more work, and I've found that there's also a meta of this where people are actually moving from that place of within the spiritual community of healing, from that place of a deeper wound of then when I heal this, then I'll be good enough. When I heal this, then I'll be loved. When I like, and the healing becomes another way for us to repeat the same programs within ourselves. And it's never enough because actually that program of whatever it is, I'm not good enough, I'm unlovable, I'm afraid to be rejected, is running the show, or the perfectionism. So I'm wondering if you could speak into that and detaching from that so people can actually have that awareness of where their healing is coming from instead of this place of lack, essentially.
oh my gosh, thank you for bringing that up. It is a level of addiction that we want to keep getting the healing done and keep trying all the modalities and keep trying to make it happen to get finally where we need to be. But I think it's kind of actually embedded in healing, and it's in a slight level of distortion that we're needing to heal in some ways. And I kind of move away a bit from healing to the concept of creating internal completion, which is that you have within your energetics, within your relationship to your own pain, and within the expansion of your consciousness, the ability to close those loops internally and clearly and cleanly. So you don't need to keep persisting in that design. So if anything's telling you that you have to keep going in the same loop to try to make things better on recurring layers, then you're not working in a pure quantum consciousness design whereby you become whole internally in the moment where you feel everything fully and you see everything clearly, and then it is done. And I truly believe we're here for layers of evolution. So I don't subscribe to like we're going to ever be fully healed. We're going to go through layers of evolution. But if you're stuck on a layer and you're looping and you're still doing the same stuff you were doing 2 years ago, even though you're healing, then there is a problem with the design around that. Um, does that make sense? There's a slight like difference there. So the evolution should be that, oh wow, here's a layer. I have the tools to consciously meet this layer, to see through the illusion, to see through the addiction, to see through the trauma that's not letting me get to my pain. And I'm going to fully meet all those places. And then I'm going to allow that to be whole in me. And then, yes, another layer will arise, of course. It's inevitable. It's what we're here to do. We're not here to do anything else but evolve, unfortunately. But it's like, how are you doing that? And are you actually able to break the pattern? Yeah.
Yeah, and this for me is why we need to have a bit of a meta view at times and have a zoom out of our even our healing journey. if we're repeating the patterns, whatever they are, if it's healing, it's like, there's some awareness that's needed. And for me, the learning of even how I'm viewing that, because for me, initially, I'd see, oh my God, I'm repeating a pattern. And then it's like, okay, now I need to fix the pattern. And then it's like, oh, Dean, hold on. That's the same energy that's got you stuck in the pattern. So, what needs to shift as we're changing these patterns? Oh, I need to bring compassion to these elements, which need to feel like I do need to change or I need to push because that's what's really that was the underlying pattern. And then we begin to change from that conscious place of not only becoming aware of the pattern, but how we're approaching the pattern as well, because that's a key point. Because where we move from is creating more of that in our reality. So, a lot of like, I know in my past, I call it mental masturbation. So I learned all these things and I would learn so much and have all this awareness, but then I would use the same way to approach a pattern, which was a need for a deeper healing to meet that underlying cause of that, which is the core wound and going back to that. And it's like it all wraps up nicely.
I love that. That's so good. So good. So it's so important. And what I find as well, it's like we don't actually know what we don't know, because consciousness is designed in a really unusual way that the unconscious is kind of hidden from us, right? Like we can't even sometimes see the road out. And that's, I think, something that I've been really passionate about is you can have self-inquiry to a point, but you also do need maybe a reflective surface, another human, to be like, hold on a minute, have you seen this about yourself? And I love, traditional therapy is beautiful, talk therapy is beautiful, but there's something to be said about a consciousness mirror whereby the threads of you that are stuck in these loops are actually pulled out and magnified. So it's like you can see face to face how you're being, instead of in sort of a dream world of like, I'm trying to heal, but I can't really get to that true deeper part of the pattern because it's unconscious, it's out of view. So I'm just going to talk in circles around what I know to be true about myself. And, a lot of the really big breakthroughs we can get are when we're brave enough to look beyond our story of what we think has happened to us and who we think we are. Um, and really dying to those aspects of ourselves that we think we have to maintain to keep ourselves safe. So that deeper level inquiry can take a bit of bravery sometimes, and compassion, like you say. Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, I think for me, the big awareness that came in around compassion is I see consciousness as we're actually playing the infinite game to some extent. The game is
Mm.
kind of to keep playing the game. And it's like, oh, here's another layer, here's another thing. There's no completion. So it's like, how do we want to play that game of continuing to play? And when I realized this, I was like, and this is so much of the conditioning for so many people, it's like when I get there or whatever it is, there's an end goal in mind. But when we can recognize this is an infinite game and there's no destination that we're truly getting to, it actually allows that slowing down and being with the process of like, okay, this is what my human experience is right now. And have some fun with it. This is a piece that I took way too seriously at the start of my journey. I was like, I'm spiritual 3 hours in the morning. I'm devoted to my practices. And I was very serious. And like, I believe this is a serious path and it requires devotion. But sometimes it's also funny to laugh at ourselves and acknowledge, wow, I did that thing again. There's a level of like, I'm still human. Okay, that's okay to be human in this reality. We don't need to be perfect. And when you see a mistake in like, or a mistake, I say that in quotation marks because it's like what's perfect rather than being who we are. When you notice a pattern, allow yourself to almost enjoy it or like experience it fully without the shame and the guilt, because that will allow you to evolve so much quicker and shift so much more as well.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love that segmentation of that concept of being spiritual. And like initially, and I was the same. I was like, oh, this is my spiritual time and I'm going to go meditate and be this. And all of a sudden I realized, hold on a minute, like I can't just confine all that to 3 hours a day. I have to bring this as a holistic thing through my whole experience, right? And that's where I went, it's not actually being the spiritual person a couple of hours a day. And I'm sure this is what you're reflected on too. It's like, it has to happen all the time. It's a conscious expression all the time, and not, and as you say, like that can be really lighthearted, but it's just this awareness that our spiritual experience is our consciousness. We are conscious, and this is where we get the gift of being conscious. It's not a segmented time or space of our experience. It has to run across our whole expression. And that's where I think it's really important, because I've worked with a lot of people that have a really strong spiritual practice, but then turn around and really horrible to their husbands or their kids or their workmates. And like, it's like, no, like, this is not a segmented experience. This is a holistic experience of our relationship with consciousness and ourselves. So being aware that that's the whole thing is really important, I think.
And I'm aware of a trend like that for me at the start of my journey. There was almost an egoic approach to the spirituality of like, now I'm spiritual. There was a superiority that came with that as well. And that it wasn't actually love, and which we're all trying to come back to ultimately is how can I have more love, or how can I show more love and compassion to this world? And I'm wondering if you've seen that experience as well, where it's the spiritual ego that we actually do need to detach from and come back to that place of like, no, this is like actually detaching from that and not using spirituality as a construct to then, um, I guess, grow our own ego identity.
Oh, 100%. And I work very heavily with truth versus illusion. So if there's any illusion that and when I speak of illusion, I mean aspects where you're not anchored in a true relationship with reality, but you're entertaining a thought form that's giving you a skewed version of what you think's happening. So if you think that because you're doing a certain practice, it's making you a better human, yet you're still not able to relate like lovingly to the people around you, then you're in a state of illusion, because you're not truly doing that. And that's not a shaming, guilting, blaming thing. It's just a conscious awareness. It's like, is this translating completely, and can others verify this, or can I verify this for myself? So for me, living in a state of truth means a radical sense of responsibility and a sense of questioning, where is it where I need to be really looking at where I'm out of alignment with my values, with how I want to actually show up in a very general sense, not just for myself on the mat or, in the practice. And yeah, just bringing that really deep awakening, I suppose, to don't let the spiritual practice be a bypass. Let it be part of the whole journey, and be truthful in that about where you're at with that. It's yeah, it's a ground for a lot of shifts, a lot of shifts.
And it opens up a conversation of honesty with ourselves. And this
Mhm.
is something that I've come to again and again with my own practices. There's periods where my practices serve me so deeply and I need to be devoted to. And then other times they actually get in the way and I feel like less excited or energized by them, or they need to change. And sometimes we can get in the rut with like, this has worked for me in the past, and so I need to keep doing this, and actually being honest with ourselves and noticing and attuning to our own energy and our how we're being in relationship, and saying, hey, is this working for me, or is this a practice because I've done it forever that I'm still
Yeah.
a part of? And maybe let it go. That's the practice.
Yeah. Yeah. If there's attachment or addiction, then we always have red flags that, yeah, maybe there's something going on here, that we're putting this in the place of a deeper level of relationship with ourselves. Yeah.
Feel like we're on the verge of wrapping up here. So I want to tune in. Like, is there any pieces that are still really present that you want to share with the audience here today as well?
Wow, that's such a big question. There's so
Big
much to share.
question, I know. Apologies for the bigness.
Oh, no, I just feel like, we're at a beautiful juncture where I think there is so much love, like such a loving experience that we have available to us here. And I think we're moving beyond some of the confines that we've had to create within our programming of what we've needed to do here to survive. So I actually think it's a really exciting time on the planet, that we can be really challenging any limitation or any program or any design, whether it be in the spiritual world or how we've looked at where we are on the planet, or what our relationship with time or space, or our humanness or our divineness, and really allowing a new level of creative thought and inquiry to come through. That, for me, everyone is a unique ray of consciousness. Everyone has their own unique understandings and gifts to bring humanity. And, a lot of my work is around being energetically sovereign and being in full expression of that true gift that is yours and yours alone. So, you and I can even be here, sharing on this, but I totally honor everyone's unique understanding and journey even within this. So it's just a beautiful, it's a beautiful time to be fully committed to that truth within yourself and within who you are. And for me, that's just being the cornerstone. It's being freedom from programs, freedom from limitations, freedom from my own conditioning, freedom from ideas about how things should be or they need to be for me to survive, to create my own reality, my own template, my own understanding of what consciousness wants to express. And everyone has that available to them. And so for me, if this understanding resonates, that's really what I want to bring forward, that you're not a victim to reality. You're not a victim to your wounding. There are designs in reality that we have to be conscious of so we can work with them and really bring our full self to the fore, because we're not trapped in the separation or the illusion of them. But it's very, very possible, and we're here to do that right now. This is the era of that coming through. So I just want to be, just sharing that message that you are the one you're looking for. You are your own truth. You are your own guru, your own guide, your own mystic. You are that. And it's just knowing that you are that is what is so important right now. Yeah.
Such a beautiful piece to begin wrapping up with. And like I'm so with this piece and so deeply, like we need to come into that relationship with ourselves and remember, and also trust. If you're listening to this, trust what you receive from this. Like some of it may not land, some pieces you may not agree with, but can you trust your own experience and begin to question it as well? That ability to trust yourself and also question yourself, and through that open the possibilities of your worldview. And this is something we talked about before jumping on, that ability to question our reality and be like, is this true, or what is this showing me? And seeing that there is more available if we're willing to question.
Yeah, I love that so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good. Such exciting times. Yeah.
Laura, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on here on the Weird Way. Before we wrap up, how can people find you? Is there any events or anything you're creating that you'd love to share with the audience as well?
Yeah. I'd love to connect with anyone that feels that resonance. And I'm on allurahalliwell.com, and then also on Allura Halliwell on Facebook and Instagram. But something I'm really excited about is that I'm just about to start touring Australia with my live event, which is called the Pattern Shift. So I'm going to be, Melbourne. I've got an Adelaide date. I've got Central Coast, Newcastle, a couple of venues in Sydney, up to Brisbane, maybe a couple around the Brisbane area, maybe up to Sunshine Coast. And we'll see if there's any call outs for anywhere else. I'm happy to come. But the intention is just to really help people understand that the pattern that we're projecting onto reality is something that we can shift, and is something that when we become conscious of, we can work directly with and have an amazing impact on our external reality. So that will be at the foundation of that experience. And yeah, I'd love to see anyone that wants to come along live and hang out. It'd be beautiful. That's on
Yeah.
Humanitics, the pattern shift. So
Mm.
yeah.
Beautiful. For anyone who's looking for that or information, I'll put it all in the show notes so they can easily get access and find you as well.
Thank you. Yay. Thank you so much, Jean. It's been such a beautiful gift to talk with you and be in the presence of your energy and your intention. It's an amazing thing you're doing, bringing this knowledge through. So thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for sharing your transmission, your truth, your love, and what you bring. Absolute pleasure. Everyone at the Weird Way, thank you for joining. Mm.